And first of all, it's my last contribution in Leaders in 2023. I want to say a huge big thank you to all of the staff in Leinster House and a happy Christmas. Taoiseach, much has been made about the date of the upcoming referendums on care and the family. For some reason, the government decided to have them on International Women's Day. Is that because you think that women are excited about the prospect of a referendum on care? That will be celebrating if a sexist and legally powerless constitutional provision is replaced with a more progressive sounding but equally powerless amendment. Should that not be the bare minimum? Perhaps it makes sense in one way that these referendums will take place on International Women's Day, as it will continue a long-standing tradition of governments patronising women rather than listening to them. It's now 7 months since Marie O'Shea published her review on abortion services. The government reacted with barely disguised horror to that report because it was so clear and it was so straightforward in its findings. The current legislation is failing women in numerous ways. Among the recommendations she made were that the mandatory 3-day waiting period be removed, the threatened criminalisation of doctors ended, more clarity when it comes to providing abortion in cases of fatal fetal abnormality, and more of a balance between an individual's right to conscientious objection and a woman's right to healthcare. Taoiseach, these barriers to care are not just an inconvenience for women, they are a danger. Yet the government failed to act on the report's very clear proposals. Instead, you kicked it out to the Health Committee for a review. That review has now been completed, and the Health Committee is about to recommend that all of the legislative changes proposed in the report are implemented without delay. The question for the government now is, will you act on those recommendations or not? We all know that so many women are still faced with unimaginable pain every year when they receive a diagnosis of fetal abnormality and they're forced to travel abroad for care. The most recent tragic case of this nature was raised by Deputy Breed Smith in this House yesterday. These women are being failed by the state. Taoiseach, I know you said that you are not convinced that the 3-day waiting period is a barrier to women receiving abortion care. I wonder if you read Marie O'Shea's report when she detailed precisely how this completely arbitrary delay can time women out of care. The 3-day wait is not just a potential barrier to care, it is an insult to the intelligence and the autonomy of women all over the country.
Thank you, Deputy.
Are you aware of any similar legal impediment to or delay to somebody accessing healthcare that they want or are entitled to? Do you think people, when they're pregnant, are somehow more mentally frail or indecisive and therefore require a patronising provision? Taoiseach, if the government really wants to do something meaningful that would have an impact on International Women's Day, will you give a commitment to implement the recommendation of Marie O'Shea's report by then?
Yeah, first of all, I thank the Deputy for raising two issues, essentially the constitutional amendments and the issue in terms of the review of the operation of the Health Regulation of Termination of Pregnancy Act 2018. I just would say to the Deputy, you have a consistent pattern of endeavouring to characterise the government position as a particular position or other, or that we're patronising women. And I would just say you're entitled to your perspectives and so on and your viewpoints, but so are people in the government house. And I don't think your characterisation of the government position is an accurate one. I would just have to put that on the record. The constitutional, the referendum, sorry, the amendments we've put forward have resulted in terms of the amendments to the constitution that we're proposing for March the 8th. It took a lot of detailed work by the Cabinet Subcommittee and a lot of legal advice in respect of the optimal position, and also in respect of taking out language that was clearly anachronistic, outdated in respect of women, to modernise the Constitution, to play constitutional catch-up, I think, as one minister has put it. And that's been debated around this House and committees for 20-odd years. It's not going to happen. and the government is going to deliver that. And there is a change in respect of care which has not been in the Constitution before. Now, there is a legitimate discussion and debate, by the way, in terms of the separation of powers as to how much we want it to be deliberated by the courts and how much to be deliberated by the executive and the Oireachtas. This is a very fundamental debate that shouldn't be sneered at or dismissed, because it's to the Oireachtas that has to allocate resources and prioritise the allocation of resources. And that is a consideration in terms of the ultimate formula or amendments that have been brought forward. Because ultimately, if you get the balance wrong, you cede all decision-making to the courts. And you denude Parliament and the executive of the day, whoever that executive is, of any capacity sometimes to target resources, to prioritise the allocation of resources, because resources are finite. That is perhaps for another day. In respect of the review of the operation of the health regulation, as you know, an operational group had been established, or was established, as a consequence of that report to progress the implementation of the operational recommendations, and a draft implementation action plan has been developed. That implementation group is a multidisciplinary, comprising healthcare professionals across determination of pregnancy pathway and service users, and it is chaired by the National Women and Infants Health Programme. Significant progress is being made in respect of various recommendations in the report, and a significant number of additional sites have introduced termination services in the past months. Legislation providing for safe access zones has now passed all stages in Dáil Éireann and will now go before the Seanad. The proposals recommending legislative changes have been referred, as you say, to the Joint Committee on Health for consideration. We now have termination services in early pregnancy are currently provided in 17 of the 19 maternity hospitals. That's a significant addition to what was the case a year ago.
Deputy Kern.
Taoiseach, first of all, you don't need help from me for the government to be characterised as sometimes being paternalistic in its attitude towards women. There's evidence of that in multiple pieces of legislation. To name just a few, legislation around mother and baby homes, telling people that they're somehow unaffected because they spent less than 6 months in an institution. Legislation that tells women they have to wait 3 days to access healthcare, something we don't see in any other kind of healthcare provision. So it's not some kind of narrative that I'm setting about you. There's evidence of that. And here we go again. We're supposed to be celebrating because finally it's going to be removed from the Constitution that a woman's place is in the home in 2023. And you're doing it on International Women's Day, like it's some kind of huge gift to us. The Taoiseach previously stated that he would feel reluctant and uncomfortable to make changes to the repeal legislation. And I just have to say that I feel reluctant and uncomfortable at the prospect of healthcare decisions for women being informed by politicians' comfort levels rather than women's autonomous decision, expert advice, or doctors' clinical judgment. The Taoiseach's reluctance to amend the law also flies in the face of the legislation itself. We said that we would review the legislation, and I think everybody can agree the idea that the review would inform how the legislation can improve. Will you take on the recommendations of Maria O'Shea's report?
Deputy Taoiseach, please.
Yeah, as I say, and as the Deputy confirmed herself, it was sent to the Oireachtas Committee on Health, and it has now completed its report. If we didn't send it to the Oireachtas Committee, I would respectfully suggest that you would be standing here this morning saying, why wasn't it referred to the Oireachtas Committee? And why should the Oireachtas Committee deal with it? We do have to follow up on that report now in terms of the review itself. And again, I'm very open to the recommendations that come from both the Oireachtas report, and government will give that very serious consideration. As I said before the House, my overriding concern is that the referendum that the people passed, and there was a set of criteria and conditions put before the people, both the referendum itself and the legislation, including the review. But we can't dismiss the fact that we put certain arguments before the people at a given time, not so long ago, and people voted on the basis of those arguments. I think that was the Taoiseach's point. It's a valid point. That said, the review was also contained within the Act. We've had the review now, and we will act on the review, and government will give that active consideration. But what I always wanted, I was very unhappy that maternity hospitals weren't providing services. That to me was the first priority. There are two more that need to make sure that they fulfil their obligations
Thank
under
you,
the
Taoiseach.
Constitution and the law, and they will come on stream in 2024.
Deputy Peter.